The great black emptiness of space stretched out before the horizon, Earth's most advanced exploration vessel. Captain Tom Miller stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed at the stars through the main view screen. 20 years in space had given him lines around his eyes and gray in his dark hair, but his sharp blue eyes were still full of wonder. "Captain, we're picking up an unusual signal," said Lisa, the ship's communications officer. Her fingers moved quickly over her console. "It's not matching any known pattern in our database." Miller nodded. "Location?" "Coming from the edge of the Orion Nebula, sir," replied Marcus, the young navigator. "About half a light-year from our position." "Interesting," Miller said. "Change course to investigate, standard approach protocols." The horizon turned gracefully, its engines humming as it moved toward the mysterious signal. Miller felt the familiar mix of excitement and caution that came with every new discovery. Humanity had been exploring space for nearly a century, establishing colonies on distant planets and moons, but they had yet to encounter intelligent alien life, until today. "Sir, visual contact," Marcus called out. The main screen flickered and then showed something that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. A massive ship hung in space, at least 5 times the size of the horizon. It was smooth and sleek, with a design unlike anything humans had built. It gleamed with a metallic purple sheen, and strange blue lights pulsed along its hull. "Are they transmitting?" Miller asked, finding his voice. Lisa nodded. "Yes, sir. The computer is trying to decode it." Lieutenant Alex Reed, the ship's tactical officer, spoke up from his station. "I'm reading energy signatures unlike anything I've seen before, Captain. Their power output is extraordinary." "Defensive posture," Miller ordered. "Shields up but weapons offline. We don't want to appear hostile." The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut with a knife as they waited. Finally, the computer chimed. "Translation matrix established," Lisa announced. "They're requesting visual communication." Miller straightened his uniform. "Accept the request." The screen changed to show an alien face. The creature had gray-blue skin with faint ridges along its forehead and cheeks. Its eyes were large and completely black, giving away nothing of what it might be thinking. "I am Commander Zell of the Vaughn Empire," the alien said, its mouth moving strangely with the words. "You have entered territory claimed by our people." Miller stepped forward. "I am Captain Tom Miller of the Earth vessel Horizon. We are on a mission of peaceful exploration. We were unaware this region was claimed by anyone. We come with respect and friendship." The alien's expression seemed to shift into something that might have been amusement, though it was hard to tell. "Earth vessel," Zell repeated. "We have heard of your kind. Newly emerged from your planet, spreading like insects across the stars." The alien's voice was smooth but held a hint of something cold. "Our empire has existed for 10,000 of your years." Miller maintained his diplomatic tone. "Then we have much to learn from you. We would welcome an exchange of knowledge and culture." "Perhaps," Zell replied. "Our sensors have scanned your vessel. Your technology is primitive." Reed tensed at his station, but Miller gave him a warning glance. "We are always eager to advance our understanding," Miller said carefully. "You will permit a delegation from our ship to board yours," Zell said. "It wasn't a request." Miller hesitated only briefly. "We would be honored to receive your delegation." After the communication ended, Reed approached Miller. "Captain, I don't like this. Their scans were incredibly invasive. They now know everything about our systems, including our weapons." "And what did you learn about theirs?" Miller asked quietly. Reed's expression was grim. "Not nearly enough. Their hull is made of materials I can't identify. The energy readings suggest weapons far beyond our capabilities." Miller nodded. "Keep analyzing, find me something useful." 2 hours later, Miller stood in the Horizon's main docking bay alongside his senior officers. The Vaughn shuttle had docked, and they were waiting to greet the alien delegation. The shuttle door opened with a soft hiss, revealing Commander Zell and 4 other Vaughn. They were all tall and moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost unnatural. Each wore a close-fitting suit of a material that shimmered slightly in the light. "Welcome aboard the Horizon," Miller said with a small bow. Zell did not return the gesture. Your ship is smaller than it appeared, he said, looking around with what seemed like disdain. But efficient for our needs, Miller replied smoothly. Would you like a tour? Yes, Zell said. Show us your weapon systems. Miller exchanged a glance with Reed. Of course, this way. As they walked through the ship, Miller noticed how the Vaughn seemed to be scanning everything with small devices they carried. He made a mental note to have the ship systems checked for any tampering after the visit. When they reached the weapons control room, Reed gave a basic overview of the Horizon's defensive capabilities. The ship was equipped with rail guns, missile launchers, and a few energy weapons still in the testing phase. Zell made a sound that might have been a laugh. You fire metal projectiles. Physical ammunition. He turned to his companions and spoke in their language, which the translation matrix was still struggling to fully decode. The other Vaughn made similar sounds. They were laughing. Kinetic weapons have served us well, Reed said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Perhaps against other primitives, Zell replied. He raised his hand, and a hologram appeared above it, showing a Vaughn ship surrounded by a glowing field. Our vessels are protected by energy shields that can repel any physical object. Your weapons would be useless against us. To demonstrate, Zell nodded to one of his companions, who pressed something on his wrist device. A small bubble of energy formed in the air between them. Reed, at Miller's nod, fired a low-powered test shot from a sidearm. The energy bubble flashed, and the projectile fell harmlessly to the floor. Impressive, Miller acknowledged, though he noticed Reed was watching the demonstration with intense focus rather than dismay. This is but a fraction of our capabilities, Zell said. The Vaughn Empire has conquered 100 worlds. Some fought, none succeeded. Miller maintained his diplomatic smile, but his mind was racing. This was clearly no longer just a first-contact situation. It was a threat assessment. We hope to avoid any need for fighting, Miller said. Earth seeks peaceful relations with all species. Peace, Zell repeated, as if the word amused him. Peace is for equals, Captain Miller. What we see here does not suggest equality. After the tour ended and the Vaughn returned to their shuttle, Miller called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. Thoughts, he asked, looking around the table. They're preparing for something, Reed said immediately. That wasn't a diplomatic visit. It was reconnaissance. Agreed, said Dr. Park, the ship's science officer. They were cataloging our strengths and weaknesses. Miller turned to Reed. You seemed interested in their shield demonstration. A small smile appeared on Reed's face. Yes, sir. I was running sensor scans while they showed off. There's something there. Something they might not even realize. What? Miller leaned forward. Every time the shield blocked the projectile, there was a tiny power fluctuation, just for a millisecond. Reed's eyes gleamed with the excitement of discovery. The shield isn't constant. It cycles. There's a moment, just a moment, when it's down. Miller considered this information. Can we exploit that? I don't know yet, Reed admitted. But it's something they think we're too primitive to notice, and that might be our only advantage. Miller nodded and stood up. Send a coded message to Earth Command. First contact established with advanced species called the Vaughn. Possible hostile intent. Request immediate instructions. He looked at each of his officers in turn. Until then, we remain diplomatic but prepare for the worst. Outside the viewports of the horizon, the massive Vaughn ship loomed, its blue lights pulsing like a heartbeat. The moment of peace was passing, and something new was beginning. 3 days had passed since the first meeting with the Vaughn. The horizon remained in position, maintaining a respectful distance from the alien vessel while Earth Command decided how to respond to this new potential threat. Captain Miller sat in his quarters, reviewing the data they had gathered. Sleep had become a luxury he could barely afford. A soft beep from his door interrupted his thoughts. Enter, he called. Lieutenant Reed walked in, holding a data tablet. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't been sleeping much either. You found something, Miller said. It wasn't a question. Reed nodded and sat down across from his captain. I've been analyzing their shield technology non-stop. The fluctuation pattern is complex, but there's definitely a pattern. He handed Miller the tablet. Every 4.3 seconds, there's a gap of approximately 0.006 seconds, barely the blink of an eye. Miller studied the readings. Can we exploit such a small window? Maybe, if we could time our weapons to fire precisely during that gap. Reed's voice trailed off. But we'd need to develop a new targeting system. A chime from the ship's communication system interrupted them. Captain to the bridge, Lisa's voice announced. We're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Miller and Reed exchanged glances before hurrying to the bridge. Admiral John Parker's face filled the main screen, his expression grim beneath his gray hair. Captain Miller, our analysts have reviewed your data on the Vaughn. The diplomatic team has also studied the language and cultural markers you've provided. And? Miller asked. We don't like what we're seeing, the Admiral replied. The Vaughn Empire's communication patterns match those of previous conquering civilizations from Earth's history. Their peaceful overtures appear to be standard practice before they establish dominance. Miller felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. So this is a prelude to invasion? We believe so, Admiral Parker confirmed. We're mobilizing the fleet, but it will take time. For now, maintain diplomatic relations while we prepare. We're sending you coordinates for a rendezvous with reinforcements. Yes, sir. There's one more thing, Miller added. Lieutenant Reed has discovered a potential weakness in their shield technology. The Admiral leaned forward. Explain. Reed stepped into view and quickly outlined his findings. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. This could be significant, Admiral Parker finally said. I'm forwarding this to our research division immediately. In the meantime, a Vaughn delegation has requested a meeting with Earth's representatives. We're sending Ambassador Wilson to your location. Understood, sir. As the communication ended, Marcus called out from his station. Captain, the Vaughn ship is moving. Miller turned to the view screen. The massive alien vessel was indeed changing position, turning slowly to face away from them. What are they doing? Miller wondered aloud. Reed was already checking his sensors. Sir, they're opening some kind of portal. It's similar to our jump technology but more stable. They watched as 3 more Vaughn ships emerged from the swirling portal. Each was smaller than Commander Zell's vessel but still impressive. They're bringing reinforcements, Miller said quietly. Get me Commander Zell. The Vaughn commander's face appeared on screen moments later. Captain Miller, Zell greeted, his tone somehow both polite and dismissive. I trust you've noticed our additional ships arriving. I have, Miller replied evenly. May I ask the purpose of these reinforcements? Merely standard protocol, Zell said smoothly. When meeting new species, we prefer to have adequate resources available for peaceful exchanges. Peaceful? Miller asked. Zell's black eyes seemed to glitter. Of course, though I should inform you that we have scanned your system thoroughly. You have several resource-rich planets and moons that would be valuable additions to the Vaughn Empire. Miller kept his expression neutral despite the clear threat. Those planets and moons are Earth colonies, Commander. They are not available for addition to any empire. Perhaps your leadership will see things differently when they arrive, Zell said. We understand a representative is coming to meet with us. Miller felt a chill at the realization that the Vaughn had been monitoring their communications. Ambassador Wilson is coming to discuss peaceful relations between our peoples, he confirmed. Excellent. We look forward to these discussions. Zell's mouth formed what might have been a smile. In the meantime, would you care to see a demonstration of Vaughn technology? A gesture of good faith. Miller glanced at Reed, who gave a subtle nod. Any information they could gather would be valuable. We would be honored, Miller replied. 2 hours later, Miller, Reed, and Dr. Park stood in the observation room of the horizon, watching as a small Vaughn shuttle positioned itself in space between the human and alien vessels. They're preparing some kind of demonstration, Dr. Park said, adjusting her instruments. I'm recording everything. Commander Zell's voice came through the comm system. Captain Miller, we understand your weapons rely primarily on kinetic force, physical projectiles moving at high speed. That's correct for many of our systems, Miller confirmed. Please observe, Zell replied. The Vaughn shuttle deployed what appeared to be standard human missile drones, likely replicas they had created based on their scans of Earth technology. The drones moved into position, targeting the shuttle. They're going to attack their own shuttle? Reed asked, confused. The drones fired, launching missiles that streaked toward the Vaughn craft. Just before impact, a shimmer of blue energy surrounded the shuttle. The missiles exploded against the shield, creating bright flashes but doing no apparent damage. As you can see, Zell's voice returned, your most powerful weapons are useless against even our smallest vessels. Miller watched as the demonstration continued. The Vaughn shuttle now deployed energy weapons, firing beams of purple light that easily destroyed the remaining drones. Our defensive and offensive capabilities are beyond your current technology, Zell continued. This is not meant as a threat, merely a demonstration of reality. Thank you for the demonstration, Miller replied diplomatically. It was most informative. After the communication ended, Miller turned to his officers. Thoughts? They're trying to intimidate us, Dr. Park said immediately. Reed was looking at his data readings with intense focus. Sir, I recorded the entire shield sequence. The fluctuation is consistent with my earlier findings. There's definitely a gap. Could we hit that gap with our current weapons? Miller asked. Reed shook his head. Not reliably. The timing would need to be precise to the millisecond. But his eyes lit up with an idea. What if we modified our targeting systems? Created something specifically designed to exploit this weakness? How quickly could we develop such a system? Miller asked. With help from Earth's research division. Maybe a few weeks, Reed estimated. The real question is whether the Vaughn know about this weakness themselves. If they did, they'd have fixed it, Dr. Park pointed out. The fact that the gap exists suggests they either don't know or don't consider it a vulnerability. Miller nodded slowly. Because no one has ever exploited it before. No one has ever had the chance to observe their shields closely enough. Or no one was primitive enough to still be using physical weapons, Reed added with a grim smile. Their mockery of our technology might be their downfall. A notification chimed on Miller's communicator. Ambassador Wilson's shuttle has entered our sector. We'll dock with them in 30 minutes. As they prepared to receive the Earth ambassador, Miller couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The Vaughn weren't here for peaceful relations. They were sizing up Earth for conquest. Their only hope lay in the almost imperceptible flaw that Reed had discovered, a moment of weakness in an otherwise perfect defense. A split second when the mighty Vaughn shields went down. A brief instant that might mean the difference between Earth's freedom and its subjugation. They just needed to find a way to exploit that moment before it passed forever. Ambassador Wilson was not what Captain Miller had expected. Instead of the stern diplomat he had imagined, Jack Wilson was a man in his late 30s with bright eyes and a quick smile. More surprisingly, he had brought with him a team of engineers rather than diplomats. Ambassador, welcome aboard the Horizon, Miller said as they shook hands in the docking bay. Please call me Jack, Wilson replied. He gestured to the 4 people behind him. And these aren't political advisors. They're the best weapons engineers Earth has to offer. Miller raised an eyebrow. I wasn't informed of this. Jack lowered his voice. Earth Command thought it best to maintain appearances. Officially, I'm here to negotiate. Unofficially. He glanced at the engineers. We're here to turn Lieutenant Reed's discovery into a weapon. Miller nodded slowly. I see. Admiral Parker took Reed's findings seriously. Very seriously, Jack confirmed. The entire Earth defense network is being modified as we speak, but we need to test the theory in actual combat conditions. He handed Miller a data chip. These are your new orders. In the ship's main conference room, Miller gathered his senior staff along with Jack and his team. The mood was tense as Miller outlined their new mission. Earth Command believes war with the Vaughn is inevitable, Miller explained. For more Vaughn battle groups have been detected entering our solar system. They're positioning themselves near our major colonies. They're preparing for invasion, Reed said grimly. Miller nodded. While I meet with Commander Zell to negotiate, our real mission is to finish developing a weapon that can penetrate their shields. Jack stepped forward. Based on Lieutenant Reed's data, we've designed a timing system that can detect the shield fluctuation patterns and calculate the precise moment to fire. He brought up a holographic display showing the new device. We call it the sync module. It looks simple, Dr. Park observed. By design, one of Jack's engineers replied. It needs to be easy to mass-produce and install on all Earth vessels and defense platforms. The challenge, Jack continued, is that each Vaughn ship has a slightly different shield pattern. The sync module needs to analyze it first, then adjust the weapon timing accordingly. How long does the analysis take? Reed asked. About 30 seconds of continuous scanning, Jack replied. During which we'd be vulnerable, Miller frowned. So our ships would need to survive at least 30 seconds of Vaughn attack before being able to fight back effectively. That's the catch, Jack acknowledged. We're hoping to install the first prototype on the horizon today. With your permission, Captain. Miller looked around at his crew, then back to Jack. Let's get to work. While the engineering teams worked to modify the Horizon's main weapon systems, Miller prepared for his meeting with Commander Zell. The Vaughn leader had requested the meeting take place on his ship, a clear power move that Miller had little choice but to accept. Remember, Jack said as Miller prepared to board the shuttle, the goal is to keep them talking. The longer they believe diplomacy is an option, the more time we have to prepare. I understand, Miller replied. But what if they can detect the modifications we're making? The changes are minimal from an external scanning perspective, Jack assured him. They're looking for energy weapons, not timing adjustments to existing systems. Miller nodded and boarded the shuttle. The interior of the Vaughn command ship was even more impressive than Miller had imagined. Tall, sweeping corridors led to a vast chamber where Commander Zell waited, seated on what could only be described as a throne. Captain Miller, Zell greeted, his dark eyes revealing nothing. Where is your ambassador? Wilson is preparing our proposal, Miller replied smoothly. He sent me ahead to establish preliminary terms. Zell made a dismissive gesture. There are no terms to discuss. The Vaughn Empire has claimed your solar system. We offer you a choice: serve as a protectorate under our guidance, or face elimination. Miller kept his expression neutral despite the bluntness of the threat. Surely there's room for a more beneficial arrangement for both our peoples. Both. Zell seemed amused. Captain, you fail to understand your position. Let me show you something. A large holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing the Earth's solar system. Red markers indicated Vaughn fleet positions. We have already surrounded your major colonies, Zell explained. In 2 of your Earth days, we will begin our conquest. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your shields cannot protect you. Then why offer terms at all? Miller asked. Why not simply attack? Efficiency, Zell replied simply. Intact infrastructure is more valuable than rubble. Willing servants are more productive than slaves. Miller studied the display, memorizing the fleet positions. And if we refuse? Then your species will learn a harsh lesson about defying the Vaughn Empire. Back on the horizon, Miller reported what he had learned to Jack and his team. 2 days, Reed repeated. That's all the time we have. Jack nodded. The modifications are almost complete. We've adjusted the rail guns and missile guidance systems to work with the sync module. Will it be enough? Miller asked. It has to be, Jack replied. The entire Earth fleet is being retrofitted as we speak, but they won't be ready in time to help the outer colonies. We're looking at a fighting retreat at best. Miller turned to the tactical display. Then we need to test the system immediately. If it works, we can transmit the final calibrations to Earth. Tested how? Dr. Park asked. We can't just fire on the Vaughn ship. No, Miller agreed. But there's a smaller vessel, one of their scouts, patrolling the asteroid belt nearby. If we can disable it without alerting the main fleet. Reed nodded slowly. A quick strike. Get in. Confirm the system works. Get out. Exactly, Miller said. But we need to make it look like an accident. Something that wouldn't raise suspicions. Jack thought for a moment. What about a mining explosion? The asteroid belt has several human mining operations. If we lure the scout near one, we could detonate some charges. Reed finished. Make it seem like a mining accident caught their ship in the blast and test our weapons in the confusion. Miller agreed. It's risky, but it's our best option. 6 hours later, the Horizon was in position near a human mining outpost in the asteroid belt. The small crew of miners had been evacuated after being briefed on the importance of their mission. Vaughn scout approaching, Marcus reported from his station. They're scanning the mining facility. As expected, Miller said. They're curious about our operations. Status of the sync module. Reed checked his readings. Online and functioning. It's already analyzing their shield patterns. Good, Miller said. Begin the countdown for the mining charges. The bridge crew watched tensely as the Vaughn scout moved closer to the mining facility, its sensors probing the human operation. Detonation in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Reed counted down. A series of explosions rippled through the asteroid, sending chunks of rock and dust into space. The Vaughn scout was caught in the cloud, momentarily disoriented. Now. Miller ordered. The Horizon's main rail gun fired. The projectile streaked through space, its timing perfectly synchronized with the Vaughn shield fluctuation. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a flash of light erupted from the Vaughn scout as the rail gun round penetrated its shield and struck the hull. Direct hit. Reed exclaimed. Shield penetration confirmed. The Vaughn vessel listed to one side, trailing debris and venting atmosphere. It worked, Jack whispered, his eyes wide. It actually worked. Miller allowed himself a small smile. Transmit the data to Earth Command immediately. Then let's get out of here before they realize this wasn't an accident. As the Horizon turned away from the disabled Vaughn scout, Miller knew they had just changed the course of the coming war. The Vaughn believed their shields made them invincible. They had mocked human weapons as primitive and useless. But they hadn't counted on human ingenuity or the importance of a single fleeting moment. The moment had passed, and it might prove to be the turning point. News of the successful test spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Within hours, ships across the solar system were being fitted with sync modules based on the Horizon's design. But time was running out. The Vaughn are moving, Marcus announced from his station on the bridge. The view screen showed dozens of enemy vessels advancing toward the human colony on New Terra, the most populated outpost beyond Earth. Captain Miller studied the tactical display grimly. How many of our ships have been upgraded with the sync modules? About 60% of the fleet, Reed replied. The rest are still being modified. Jack Wilson entered the bridge, his face showing signs of exhaustion after working non-stop for the past day. Earth Command has sent new orders. We're to join the defense of New Terra. Miller nodded. How many civilians on the colony? Nearly 5 million, Dr. Park said quietly. The weight of responsibility settled on Miller's shoulders. 5 million lives depended on whether their new weapon would work against the main Vaughn fleet. Set course for New Terra, he ordered. Maximum speed. The Horizon arrived at New Terra 12 hours later, joining a hastily assembled defense fleet of 30 human vessels. The planet loomed large in the view screen, its surface dotted with the lights of human settlements. Admiral Parker's flagship, the Defender, was coordinating the defense. Miller and Jack transferred over for a final strategy meeting. Our intel suggests the Vaughn will attack within the next 6 hours, Admiral Parker explained, addressing the gathered ship captains. They've assembled a fleet of 50 warships. We're outnumbered, one of the captains pointed out. Yes, Parker agreed. But thanks to Captain Miller and Ambassador Wilson, we have a weapon that can penetrate their shields. He brought up a display showing the sync module design. Every ship has been fitted with this technology. It analyzes the enemy shield pattern and fires precisely when their shields flicker. Will it work against their entire fleet? Another captain asked. Jack stepped forward. Each Vaughn ship has a slightly different shield frequency, so your targeting systems will need time to adjust to each vessel. Focus fire on one ship at a time when possible. We've also discovered something else, Admiral Parker continued. He zoomed in on a schematic of a Vaughn vessel. Their internal scans show minimal armor plating. They've relied so heavily on their shields that their hulls are relatively vulnerable. Miller saw hope flicker across the faces of the assembled officers. The Vaughn weren't invincible after all. One more thing, Parker added. Earth Command has authorized the use of our experimental EMP warheads. If the sync modules work as expected, These should be devastating against Vaughn systems once we get past their shields. The meeting concluded with final assignments. The Horizon would join the front line of defense, putting their tested sync module directly against the Vaughn. As Miller prepared to return to his ship, Admiral Parker pulled him aside. "Tom," he said quietly, using Miller's first name. "If this doesn't work." "It will work," Miller replied firmly. Parker nodded. "But if it doesn't, the Defender will stay behind to cover the evacuation ships." "You understand?" Miller understood perfectly. If the battle turned against them, Parker would sacrifice himself and his crew to save as many civilians as possible. "Let's make sure it doesn't come to that," Miller said. The Vaughn fleet arrived exactly as predicted, appearing at the edge of the system in perfect formation. Commander Zell's massive flagship led the way, its purple hull gleaming against the darkness of space. "All ships, battle positions," Admiral Parker's voice came through the comm system. "Remember your training. Hold fire until you have a lock with the sync module." The human fleet spread out in a defensive screen around New Terra. On the Horizon's bridge, tension was thick in the air as the crew prepared for battle. "Sync module online," Reed reported. "Targeting systems locked on the lead Vaughn vessel." "All weapons standing by," Marcus added. Miller took a deep breath. "Open a channel to all human ships." When the channel was open, he spoke clearly and confidently. "This is Captain Miller. Whatever happens today, remember that we are fighting for our homes, our families, and our future. The Vaughn think their technology makes them unbeatable. Let's show them what humans can do when pushed too far." A chorus of acknowledgments came from the other ships. Even Admiral Parker gave a solemn, "Well said, Captain." The Vaughn fleet continued its advance, seemingly unconcerned by the human defenders. "They're in range," Reed announced. "Hold fire," Miller ordered. "Let them make the first move." They didn't have to wait long. The Vaughn ships opened fire, sending purple energy beams slicing through space toward the human fleet. Several ships took direct hits, their shields flaring as they absorbed the impact. "Now," Admiral Parker commanded. "All ships, fire at will." The Horizon's rail guns roared to life, launching projectiles at precisely calculated intervals. Around them, the rest of the human fleet did the same, filling space with a barrage of missiles and railgun fire. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The Vaughn shields shimmered as they had during the demonstration days earlier. But then something changed. One of the smaller Vaughn ships suddenly erupted in a series of explosions as multiple human weapons penetrated its shields at the exact moment of vulnerability. The vessel listed to one side, venting atmosphere and debris. "It's working," Reed shouted. "Shield penetration confirmed." The Vaughn fleet faltered, clearly surprised by the effectiveness of the human weapons, but they quickly regrouped and continued their attack. "They're adjusting their formations," Marcus reported. "Spreading out to make targeting more difficult." Miller nodded. "Admiral Parker suggests we focus fire on their flagship." "Agreed," Parker replied. "All ships, target the Vaughn command vessel. Coordinate firing solutions through the Defender." The battle intensified as both fleets maneuvered for position. Human ships took damage, but for the first time, they were inflicting serious harm on the Vaughn as well. The Horizon shuddered as it took a direct hit. "Shields at 60%, Marcus called out. "Stay on target," Miller ordered. "Reed, what's the status of the flagship targeting?" "Sync module has locked onto their pattern," Reed replied. "Firing solution ready in 3, 2, 1. Firing." The Horizon's main rail gun fired, joined by concentrated fire from a dozen other human ships. The massive projectiles streaked toward the Vaughn flagship, timed to hit precisely during the shield gap. The impacts were devastating. Multiple explosions blossomed across the Vaughn flagship's hull as the human weapons found their mark. "Direct hits," Reed exclaimed. "Their main power systems are fluctuating." On the view screen, Miller watched as Commander Zell's mighty vessel began to list to one side, secondary explosions rippling along its length. "The rest of the Vaughn fleet is falling back," Marcus reported with disbelief in his voice. "They're retreating." A cheer went up across the bridge, quickly echoed by the crews of the other human ships, but Miller didn't join in. He kept his eyes on the damaged Vaughn flagship. "Get me a direct channel to Commander Zell," he ordered. A moment later, Zell's face appeared on screen. The Vaughn commander's usual composure was gone, replaced by shock and anger. "How?" he demanded. "How did you penetrate our shields?" Miller allowed himself a small smile. "There's an old human saying, Commander, pride comes before a fall. You were so confident in your technology that you never considered its flaws. Or perhaps you simply underestimated those you considered primitive." Zell's black eyes narrowed. "This is not over, human." "No," Miller agreed. "But the advantage is no longer yours. The moment when you could have easily defeated us has passed." The connection cut off as the Vaughn flagship limped away, joining the retreat of the alien fleet. "All ships, stand down to condition yellow." Admiral Parker's voice came through the comm. "Maintain defensive positions in case they return." Miller sat back in his command chair, feeling the tension of battle slowly releasing its grip. They had won the day, but the war was far from over. The Vaughn had learned a valuable lesson: never underestimate your enemy, no matter how primitive they might seem. And humanity had learned something too. Sometimes the greatest advantage comes from being underestimated. 3 weeks had passed since the battle at New Terra. The victory had given humanity precious time to prepare for what everyone knew would be a larger conflict. Every ship in the Earth fleet now carried sync modules, and ground defenses on all colonies had been upgraded with the new technology. Captain Miller stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital defense station, looking down at the blue planet below. Admiral Parker and Jack Wilson joined him, both looking tired but determined. "The Vaughn have gone silent," Parker said, handing Miller a data tablet. "No movements, no communications for almost 2 weeks." Miller reviewed the report. "They're regrouping, planning." Jack nodded. "Our intelligence suggests they've called for reinforcements from the core of their empire. They're not giving up." "Would you?" Miller asked. "If you believed you ruled the stars, would one defeat make you surrender?" "No," Parker admitted. "But it gives us time." "Time for what?" Miller asked. Jack smiled. "Time for this." He activated a holographic display showing a new weapon design. "We're calling it the phase cannon. It's designed to create an artificial shield gap in Vaughn vessels rather than just waiting for the natural fluctuation." Miller studied the design with interest. "You're forcing the shields to cycle." "Exactly," Jack confirmed. "Instead of waiting for the 0.006-second gap every 4.3 seconds, we can create a gap on demand." "How soon until it's ready?" Parker asked. "The prototype is already installed on the horizon," Jack replied. "We can begin testing tomorrow." Miller was about to respond when an urgent alert sounded throughout the station. The 3 men rushed to the command center, where officers were scrambling to monitor stations. "Report," Parker demanded. "Sir, we're detecting massive spatial distortions at the edge of our solar system," a sensor officer replied. "Energy signatures match Vaughn technology, but on a scale we haven't seen before." The main screen showed a swirling vortex of energy forming near Pluto's orbit. It was far larger than any portal the Vaughn had created previously. "How many ships?" Miller asked, dreading the answer. "Unknown, sir," the officer replied. "But the energy reading suggests hundreds." Parker's face paled. "They're bringing their entire fleet." Commander Zell stood on the bridge of his new flagship, watching as the great portal stabilized. The defeat at New Terra had cost him his previous vessel and the respect of many in the Vaughn High Command. But he had convinced them to grant him one final chance to conquer the human system. "The portal is stable, Commander," his second-in-command reported. "The main fleet is beginning transit." Zell nodded. "And the modifications to our shields?" "Complete, Commander. The shield cycling has been adjusted to a random pattern. The humans will no longer be able to predict the momentary gaps." Zell felt satisfaction flow through him. The humans had been clever, discovering the one weakness in Vaughn technology. But the Vaughn were not fools. They had learned and adapted. "Prepare all ships for the final assault," Zell ordered. "This time, we will show no mercy." Back on Earth, the Defense Council had assembled an emergency session. Representatives from all colonies joined via holographic projection. As Admiral Parker outlined the situation, the mood grew increasingly somber. The Vaughn are returning with a force far larger than anything we've faced before, he explained. Our estimates suggest at least 300 warships. A murmur of dismay ran through the assembly. What about the sync modules? A colony representative asked. Will they still be effective? Jack stepped forward, his expression grave. We don't know. Our intelligence suggests the Vaughn may have modified their shield technology. If they've adjusted the cycling pattern, our current sync modules may be useless. Then we're back where we started, another representative said, voice heavy with despair. Not quite, Miller interjected. We still have the phase cannon prototype. If it works as designed, it could force their shields to cycle on our terms, not theirs. One prototype against 300 ships, someone scoffed. Admiral Parker raised his hand for silence. If the prototype works, we can quickly retrofit our fleet with the technology. What we need is time. How much time? The Earth President asked, speaking for the first time. 3 days, Jack replied. Maybe 4. The President nodded slowly. Then we need to delay them. Admiral Parker, what do you suggest? Parker brought up a tactical display of the solar system. We've repositioned our fleet at these strategic points. We can't win a direct confrontation, but we can slow their advance with hit-and-run tactics. The Horizon will lead the first strike team, Miller volunteered. We'll test the phase cannon in actual combat. It's decided then, the President said. We'll buy time for the retrofit while the Horizon tests the new weapon. May God help us all. As the meeting concluded, Miller found Jack looking troubled. What is it? Miller asked. The phase cannon, Jack admitted. It's not fully tested. The power requirements are enormous. Using it could burn out the Horizon's engines. Miller met his friend's eyes. If it works, it's worth the risk. 12 hours later, the Horizon led a small group of 5 ships toward the advancing Vaughn fleet. They had positioned themselves behind the moon, using its mass to shield them from long-range sensors. Vaughn fleet approaching, Marcus reported. Lead elements will pass our position in 3 minutes. Miller surveyed his crew. Each face showed determination mixed with fear. They knew what was at stake. Phase cannon status, he asked. Online and charging, Reed replied. Power levels at 85% and rising. Dr. Park estimates 98% efficiency is the best we can hope for without a proper calibration sequence. It'll have to do, Miller said. Target the lead Vaughn vessel. We only get one shot at this before they realize what we're doing. The tension on the bridge was palpable as they watched the Vaughn fleet approach. These weren't just scout ships or even the battle group they had faced at New Terra. These were the elite warships of the Vaughn Empire, each one capable of devastating an entire colony. Target locked, Reed announced. Phase cannon charged to maximum. Miller took a deep breath. All ships, prepare to attack on my mark. Remember, hit hard and fast, then retreat. We're not trying to win this battle, just test the weapon. He paused. Fire. The Horizon shuddered as the phase cannon discharged. A pulse of energy unlike anything they had seen before leapt from the ship, striking the lead Vaughn vessel. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the alien ship's shields flared brightly, shifting through multiple frequencies as the phase cannon disrupted their normal pattern. Now. Miller ordered. All 5 human ships opened fire with conventional weapons. The rail guns and missiles found their mark, penetrating the destabilized shields and striking the Vaughn vessel's hull. Explosions blossomed across its surface. Direct hits. Reed shouted. Multiple hull breaches detected. They're venting atmosphere. The rest of the Vaughn fleet is responding, Marcus warned. They're changing course to intercept. All ships, begin withdrawal, Miller ordered. Mission accomplished. As they retreated at maximum speed, Miller allowed himself a moment of hope. The phase cannon had worked. It had forced the Vaughn shields to cycle erratically, creating multiple gaps for their weapons to exploit. Sir, Reed called out, voice suddenly urgent. Power fluctuations in the main engine core. The phase cannon drained more energy than expected. The ship shuddered violently. Engine output dropping, Marcus reported. We're losing speed. Miller made a quick decision. Divert all non-essential power to engines. We need to reach the rendezvous point. The Vaughn are pursuing, Reed warned. 3 ships, closing fast. Miller knew they couldn't outrun the Vaughn in their damaged state. Signal the other ships to continue without us. Transmit all phase cannon data to Earth Command. He turned to his tactical officer. Prepare to make a stand. The horizon turned to face the pursuing Vaughn ships. It was a desperate move, but they needed to buy time for the others to escape with the critical data. Sir, Lisa called from communications. We're receiving a transmission from the Vaughn. Put it through, Miller ordered. Commander Zell's face appeared on the main screen, his expression one of cold fury. Captain Miller. Your continued resistance is both futile and irritating. We do our best, Miller replied with forced casualness. Your new weapon is impressive, Zell admitted. But it changes nothing. We've already adapted our shields. Even now, your scientists are likely working to duplicate the technology across your fleet. They will not succeed in time. Miller kept his expression neutral. You seem very confident for someone who's already been surprised once. A momentary setback, Zell dismissed. I offer you one chance, Captain. Surrender your vessel and its technology, and I will spare your crew. Refuse, and you will all die. Miller pretended to consider the offer. Every second of conversation was another second for the other ships to escape with the vital data. An interesting proposal, he finally said. But I have a counteroffer. Zell raised what might have been an eyebrow. Oh. Yes, Miller said. You turn your fleet around and leave our solar system, and we'll let you live. Zell's face contorted with anger. You dare. Oh, I dare, Miller interrupted. You see, Commander, you've made a critical error. You keep underestimating us because you think we're primitive. But primitive doesn't mean stupid. As he spoke, Miller casually signaled to Reed. The tactical officer nodded and quietly began entering commands. What error would that be? Zell asked, his voice dangerous. You assume we only built one prototype, Miller said. Reed finished his sequence and nodded to Miller. Now. Miller ordered. The Horizon's secondary weapons systems, which they had kept hidden until this moment, suddenly came online. 3 modified torpedoes launched toward the approaching Vaughn ships. These weren't ordinary weapons, they were delivery systems for miniaturized versions of the phase cannon technology. What is this? Zell demanded, his composure slipping as alarms sounded on his bridge. The torpedoes detonated near the Vaughn vessels, not striking them directly but bathing them in the same disruptive energy that the phase cannon had produced. All 3 ships' shields began to fluctuate wildly. All weapons, fire! Miller commanded. The Horizon unleashed everything it had left. Rail guns, missiles, and energy weapons all targeted the vulnerable Vaughn ships. Without stable shields, the alien vessels took devastating damage. 2 Vaughn ships disabled, Reed reported with astonishment. The 3rd is retreating. Miller turned back to the screen where Zell's image still showed, now surrounded by smoke and flickering lights. As I was saying, Commander, primitive doesn't mean stupid. We anticipated you might adapt to our first technology, so we created a backup. Zell's black eyes burned with hatred. This changes nothing, human. Our main fleet is still coming. You've just ensured your death will be more painful when we catch you. Perhaps, Miller conceded. But we've bought something precious, Commander. We've bought time. And humans are very good at making use of time. He signaled to Lisa to cut the transmission. Status, he asked, turning to his officers. Engines at 30% capacity, Marcus reported. We can limp back to Earth, but it'll take time. The phase cannon miniaturization worked better than expected, Reed added. The torpedo delivery system is crude but effective. Send all data to Earth Command, Miller ordered. They need to start mass-producing the torpedo variants immediately. As the Horizon slowly made its way back toward Earth, Miller knew they had won another small victory. But the war was far from over. The main Vaughn fleet was still coming, and they would have to face it with whatever defenses they could muster in the few days they had left. Yet for the first time since this conflict began, Miller felt genuine hope. Twice now, human ingenuity had overcome Vaughn technological superiority. They had found the gaps in the seemingly impenetrable shields, both the natural fluctuations and now the ability to create artificial ones. The Vaughn were powerful, but they had a fatal flaw: arrogance. They couldn't conceive that a primitive species could challenge them. That arrogance had given humanity the precious moments it needed to find a way to fight back. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Miller made a silent promise. They would use every moment they had left to prepare. And when the Vaughn fleet arrived, they would find not a helpless planet ready for conquest, but a united humanity prepared to defend its home at any cost. The final battle was coming. It would determine whether humanity would remain free or fall under alien domination. But thanks to their discovery of the split-second vulnerability in the mighty Vaughn shields, they now had a fighting chance. Sometimes, Miller reflected, a single moment was all you needed to change the course of history. And humanity would make the most of this moment, however fleeting it might be.